Вітаю і поговоримо про пропаганду держави-агресора.
Good afternoon, and let's talk about the propaganda of the aggressor state. As the elections in Russia are approaching, their official authorities are making more and more cynical and false statements about their alleged readiness for peace, having destroyed a part of the Ukrainian territory, killed hundreds of thousands of civilians and military personnel, and occupied Ukrainian land. In an interview with the Russian propaganda state media channel One Russia and RIA Novosti, Putin said that he was ready for negotiations. We are ready. However, for a serious conversation, we want to resolve all conflicts, and especially this conflict by peaceful means. This statement is a lie, and the only purpose of this lie is to lull the attention of Ukraine's Western partners and reduce support for the Ukrainian army on the battlefield. Here, in this interview, Putin once again resorts to the rhetoric that it was not Russia that attacked Ukraine. What happened was Russia had to do it, allegedly under the influence of geopolitical circumstances, and had to defend itself. We have been promised all sorts of things many times before. They promised not to expand NATO to the east, and then we saw them at our borders, claims Putin, and once again he's lying. After all, at the time of the beginning of the military aggression in 2014, Ukraine didn't have any status in NATO, but had the status of a neutral country, officially fixed at the level of legislation. In the same interview, he once again complains that Russia has been deceived again. They promised that the internal conflict in Ukraine would be resolved by peaceful means. A day later, a coup d'etat took place. And he forgets to remind us that Ukrainian law enforcement agencies, which then swore allegiance to the fugitive President Yanukovych, began shooting Ukrainian peaceful protesters, which eventually led to the bloodshed on the Square of Independence, and so on and so forth. But again, in his statements, he tries to deceive the international community with his false claims. Are we ready for negotiations? Yes, we are, but only we are ready for negotiations based not on some desires after the use of psychotropic drugs, but on the basis of realities that have developed, as they say in such cases, on the ground. Putin said in an interview with Russia One and RIA Novosti. In other words, he confirmed that it is about fixing the occupation gains they have on the battlefield by occupying Ukrainian land, and thus taking a break for the next stage of escalation after his army recovers and receives new weapons. If we look further at Russian propaganda, they are once again trying to intimidate international partners, including after French President Macron's statement that he was ready to send French troops to Ukrainian territory. His words were commented on by Kremlin spokesperson Peskov. Paris activity, the attempt to form a coalition of countries that they say are ready to send their contingents to Ukraine, is a direct line to escalating tensions, Peskov said, as if there is no tension now, and only after that some tension will occur. He also manipulates by saying that escalating tensions in the Ukrainian direction could potentially have very undesirable consequences. It seems as if there are no such undesirable consequences now, and there is no war going on at all, and as if we are only talking about intimidation by war. Even though Russian aggression began 10 years ago and the full-scale invasion more than 2 years ago, fake news is actively spreading in the Russian media sphere. In particular, the Russian state-run RIA Novosti news agency publishes alleged conversation between commanders and soldiers of elite units of the armed forces of Ukraine, who are dissatisfied with the changes in the military leadership of Ukraine. This is a lie. These videos are edited and fake, although RIA Novosti refers to representatives of Russian security agencies who allegedly received access to a closed chat where Ukrainian soldiers urge each other to stand up for the dismissed commander-in-chief of the armed forces. This information is simply a lie. No such conversations have ever taken place. Similarly, Russian propagandists, in particular the Russia Today channel, manipulate and lie, publishing reports that the Pentagon may secretly take a president of Ukraine out of Kyiv, and immediately draw a favorable analogy through confusing themselves and the Ukrainian leaders. Like the Nazis who rescued the overthrown Italian dictator Mussolini in 1943. This statement is, of course, simply a misleading statement made by the aggressor state in order to manipulate the public consciousness in terms favorable to them. Fascism, Nazism, and so on. But in reality, it's just a lie, for a lie's sake. Well, it is impossible to watch how Russian propaganda abuses the residents of the occupied territories. In particular, Russian propaganda resources publish reports that residents of the Zaporizhzhia region thank God for the opportunity to elect the president of Russia. Heartwarming footage of voting in a remote village in the Zaporizhzhia region is published by the Russian propagandist media. In the video, this woman also crosses the ballot box. It is clear that these videos are, if not staged, then made at gunpoint, with the sole purpose of showing alleged support for the occupation forces in Ukraine. And some fakes are as primitive as possible, published by the aggressive state. In particular, a post appeared on the X social network, formerly Twitter, claiming that the leader of the right sector, the commander of the Ukrainian volunteer army Dmytro Yarosh, had called for the removal of the Ukrainian leadership from their posts. This is an absolute fake. Dmytro Yarosh did not make such publications, and this fake was created by Russian special services. As explained by the Ukrainian volunteer army, Dmytro Yarosh minimized his presence on social media after the start of the full-scale invasion so that his speeches would not be manipulated by Russian propaganda, which loved to plant the so-called Yarosh business card on any occasion to shift responsibility for its criminal actions onto Ukraine. And another fake on the internet is that German farmers allegedly made anti-Ukrainian slogans during a rally in Germany, which was spread by the Russian propaganda media Sputnik, which is a subsidiary of Russia Today. And allegedly, the tractors with which the German farmers went on strike had inscriptions saying that the German government was financing the war in Ukraine. Today we send tanks, tomorrow airplanes, the day after tomorrow our forces, were allegedly written on the tractor. This is a lie. These photos are photoshopped. And the funny thing is that other Russian propaganda resources had previously published photos of this tractor when they covered these protests in Germany, but without these propaganda inscriptions, which were simply added in Photoshop. This is the most primitive fake that can be exposed, using Russian propaganda resources themselves. The traditional call at the end of this briefing is that Russian propaganda does not disdain anything. But very often, their fakes are very simple and easy to understand and point out manipulation using basic fact-checking and critical thinking. Therefore, we urge you not to trust Russian propaganda, but to trust the Ukrainian military and political leadership, as well as the verified reports of the Ukrainian media, including the Ukrainian Teleson. See you soon.